The early struggles of today's tech giants are often overshadowed by their eventual success. Yet behind the scenes lies a landscape of doubt, failure, near-collapse moments, and fragile beginnings that revealed just how uncertain the future once looked for companies now considered unstoppable. Long before they became empires, these companies were fragile experiments held together by conviction rather than resources, by stubborn vision rather than stability, and by founders who pushed forward despite being surrounded by skepticism that would have crushed most ordinary teams. When we look back today, it is easy to assume inevitability. But the truth is that nothing about the rise of these giants was inevitable. Amazon was once a tiny online bookstore running out of a garage, its servers crashing on every major traffic spike, and its financial models surviving more on hope than proof. Google began as a scrappy academic project that investors dismissed as unnecessary in a world already full of search engines considered good enough, forcing Larry Page and Sergey Brin to battle for attention they could not afford to buy. Facebook faced its own turbulence as it struggled to scale infrastructure that was never meant to support millions of users, while also navigating legal threats, campus rivalry, and public opinion swings that could have ended the project before it left Harvard. Apple nearly died altogether in the 1,990 seconds, bleeding money, losing direction, and collapsing under the weight of its own failed products. Until Steve Jobs returned, not with magic, but with brutal cuts, renewed focus, and an insistence that simplicity, not size, would save the company. Even giants like Microsoft emerged from long nights, uncertain contracts, terrifying financial cliffs, and a market where dominance belonged entirely to others. These stories remind us that every tech giant we know today once lived on the edge of obscurity, sustained by the courage of teams who kept building even when the path forward was invisible. One of the most striking patterns in their early struggles is that none of them began with perfect timing, abundant resources, or clarity of direction. Instead, they grew inside environments marked by chaos, technical breakdowns, founder disagreements, investor rejection, operational overload, and external pressures that could have ended them at any moment. Amazon, for instance, grew faster than its systems could handle, causing warehouse operations to devolve into panic as employees scrambled among mountains of books stacked in chaotic configurations, literally crawling on the floor to fulfill holiday orders. Google nearly collapsed under the cost of servers needed to process search queries because every improvement in algorithmic quality made traffic rise faster than they could afford. Facebook's servers melted repeatedly as college after college joined, leaving the team sleep-deprived and patching code under catastrophic time pressure. Apple's early failures were almost Shakespearean, with internal politics, product confusion, and expensive miscalculations pushing the company to the brink of bankruptcy. Each company's narrative is filled with moments where survival hung by a thread, a funding round almost lost, a product nearly scrapped, a customer base slipping away, or a competitor threatening to make them irrelevant. What we now celebrate as innovation was, at the time, a series of desperate bets made by founders who had more belief than evidence. Perhaps the most misunderstood dimension of these early struggles is the emotional toll they inflicted on their founders. Jeff Bezos faced mockery from Wall Street analysts who dismissed the internet as a fad and called Amazon a guaranteed failure. Larry and Sergey battled constant frustration as they watched superior technology lose to inferior but well-funded competitors, wondering if brilliance alone would ever be enough. Mark Zuckerberg confronted public backlash, internal betrayal, and the fear that one wrong decision could collapse the entire network. Steve Jobs wrestled with the humiliation of being forced out of Apple and the burden of returning to fix a company many believed was already dead. Bill Gates endured immense pressure, competing in a market defined by giants who viewed Microsoft as an insignificant outsider. These emotional struggles shape the reality that early-stage tech history is not just a story of engineering, but a story of endurance, of leaders who pushed forward even when every indicator pointed toward failure. Financial instability was another defining battlefield. Startups often survive one expense cycle away from death, but for these early giants, financial fragility was almost constant. Amazon reinvested so aggressively that profits were non-existent for years, leading critics to label the company reckless. Google struggled to find a viable business model until the creation of AdWords. And even then, advertisers were skeptical of buying text-based ads ranked algorithmically. Apple's cash reserves dwindled to the point where bankruptcy seemed inevitable until an unexpected lifeline from Microsoft bought the company time to rebuild. Facebook, though blessed with user growth, had no clear path to monetization for its first years, leaving investors uncertain whether the platform would ever generate real revenue. These companies survived not because they had money, but because they discovered ways to stretch it, reallocate it, or reinvent themselves before running out. Innovation, in many cases, was born not from luxury, but from scarcity. Another revealing struggle is operational chaos. Early teams were small, inexperienced, and responsible for tasks far beyond their expertise. Amazon employees built makeshift desks from wooden doors, packed orders by hand, and slept in the office during peak season. Google's early staff had to physically wire and rewire server racks as they expanded, navigating constant overheating, outages, and data crashes. Facebook's tiny engineering team confronted bugs that could delete entire networks or expose private data, forcing them to ship fixes at breakneck speed. Apple's hardware teams, constrained by limited budgets and even fewer engineers, juggled overlapping deadlines and conflicting product visions. These companies were not streamlined machines. They were messy, overburdened, under-resourced laboratories, filled with people learning faster than they broke things. And threading through all these struggles was competition, merciless, overwhelming competition. Amazon faced Barnes & Noble, a giant retailer with deep pockets and national influence. Google confronted Yahoo and AltaVista, companies that dominated search with resources far beyond its reach. Facebook battled MySpace, Friendster, and dozens of regional networks racing to capture social connection online. Apple fought against Microsoft's near monopoly and the dominance of PC clones. Each tech giant was the underdog, dismissed by incumbents who believed early advantages would protect them forever. Yet what the incumbents lacked was hunger, the relentless urgency that only struggle can forge. The early struggles of these giants reveal a deeper truth about innovation. Greatness is forged not in perfect conditions, but in pressure, constraint, and uncertainty. Their stories highlight that the companies shaping the modern world were once fragile projects, held together by improvisation, intuition, sleepless nights, and a refusal to quit. These struggles were not mere obstacles. They were the crucibles that shaped the identity, culture, and philosophy of each company. And through their repeated encounters with failure and near collapse, they developed the resilience needed to withstand the turbulent years that followed, proving that the giants we revere today were once just as vulnerable, confused, and overwhelmed as any aspiring startup, and that the only real difference between those that failed and those that survived often came down to a single, persistent belief that if they could hold on just a little longer, push a little harder, and solve one more impossible problem, they might earn the chance to build the future they envisioned, allowing their fragile beginnings to eventually become the foundations of empires that would redefine entire industries, reshape global culture, and alter the trajectory of technology itself. As these fragile beginnings harden into momentum, the narrative shifts from survival to transformation, revealing how the very struggles that once threatened to destroy these companies became the catalysts that forged their long-term strength. The second phase of their journey, often less dramatic but far more revealing, shows how tech giants learn to scale, institutionalize their values, and convert chaos into disciplined innovation. Amazon, for example, turned its early logistical nightmares into a world-class fulfillment network, building sophisticated algorithms, warehouse robotics, and operational playbooks inspired by the painful lessons of those first chaotic holiday seasons. Google refined its search infrastructure with redundancy, distributed systems, and engineering rigor that emerged directly from the outages and crashes that once pushed the founders to their limits. Facebook transformed its early scaling crises into some of the most advanced reliability engineering practices in the industry, investing in data centers, failover systems, and tools that allowed billions of users to connect seamlessly. Apple used the humiliation of its near collapse to harden its philosophy around focus, design purity, and intentional constraint, creating a culture where product excellence became non-negotiable. Even Microsoft, shaped by its years competing from a position of weakness, developed an obsession with platform dominance and developer ecosystems that would become its defining strategic advantage. What makes these evolutions extraordinary is not that the companies grew, but that they grew by metabolizing their early failures into strengths that competitors could not easily replicate. Scarcity turned into efficiency, chaos turned into culture, rejection turned into resilience, and uncertainty turned into strategic clarity. Yet scaling did not eliminate struggle, it simply changed its form. As tech giants expanded, they faced new challenges: regulatory pressure, cultural tension, global responsibility, and the existential question of how to innovate without losing the scrappy mentality that once defined them. The founders had to transition from being improvisational builders to long-term visionaries, capable of leading thousands rather than dozens, shaping global infrastructure rather than prototype hacks. Amazon confronted skepticism about its diversification beyond retail, pushing forward with AWS despite widespread doubt. Google wrestled with the tension between its "don't be evil" ethos and the realities of operating a massive advertising business. Facebook navigated controversies tied to privacy, influence, and digital ethics. Apple learned that perfection at scale required ruthlessly pruning product lines and operational practices. Microsoft reinvented itself repeatedly, shifting from software to cloud, from closed ecosystems to open collaboration. These transitions were not smooth. They were filled with internal debate, painful mistakes, public scrutiny, and moments where the companies risked losing the identity forged in their early battles. But through each evolution, the giants that once scrambled for survival rediscovered the same persistence that had carried them through their early chaos, the determination to keep building even when the world questioned them. And at the center of this entire journey lies a profound lesson. Tech giants were not born giants. They were sculpted by struggle. They succeeded not because they avoided hardship, but because they treated hardship as information signals pointing toward necessary reinvention. The myth of overnight success dissolves when one studies their beginnings. The reality is that these companies endured years of doubt, exhaustion, failure, and fragile progress long before the world understood their potential. Their greatest breakthroughs emerged from the very pressures that nearly destroyed them. Their cultures were shaped in moments of near collapse, their systems refined through crisis, their leaders forged by uncertainty. And as we look at the monolithic institutions they have become, it is tempting to see permanence, but permanence is an illusion. They too will face new challengers, new disruptions, new storms. The cycle of innovation will continue, and the next generation of tech giants is already struggling somewhere in obscurity, fighting through sleepless nights, broken prototypes, skeptical investors, and impossible odds. The story behind the scenes reminds us that greatness is not a straight ascent, but a series of trials that carve depth into ambition. The giants we admire today were once fragile, frightened, and uncertain, but they kept moving. And in that relentless forward motion lies the true origin of every technological revolution: completed.